Born inside a palace, raised in the most glamorous kingdom in the world, and handed a name that opened every door on earth. Caroline of Monaco had everything from the very beginning. The wealth. The beauty. The title. The fairy tale. And yet, the more the world celebrated her, the harder her real life became to survive. Because here is what no one ever told you about Caroline. The woman behind the designer gowns and the royal smile, the woman who has finally, at 69 years old, walked away from the world that once couldn't stop watching her, was never who any of us thought she was. And what she has been quietly carrying for decades, will leave you speechless. She came into this world on January 23, 1957, in Monte Carlo, Monaco. The moment she arrived, she was already famous. Her mother was Grace Kelly, the most celebrated actress in Hollywood, a woman so breathtaking that a real prince had fallen in love with her on a movie set and made her his queen. Her father, Prince Rainier III, ruled one of the smallest and most dazzling kingdoms on earth. Caroline didn't choose this life. She was born into it. She was educated at the finest schools in Europe. She studied at the Sorbonne in Paris. She spoke multiple languages. She was brilliant, sharp, and deeply aware of the world around her. But from the very beginning, there was a pressure that never left her alone. Every photograph. Every outing. Every friendship. Every glance across a room, analyzed, judged, and printed on front pages around the world. She was not just a young woman trying to find her way. She was a product. A symbol. A story the world had already decided it owned. And the harder Caroline pushed back against that, the more the cameras chased her. But what no one realized at the time was that behind that confidence and that fire, something was quietly building. A weight she couldn't put down. A pressure. The first crack appeared in 1978. Caroline fell in love with Philippe Junot, a French businessman 15 years older than her, charming and worldly and nothing like the carefully approved suitors her family had in mind. Her father had serious doubts. The royal circle whispered. The press called it reckless. But Caroline was 21 years old, she was in love, and she didn't care what anyone thought. The wedding made headlines across the globe. Millions watched. And for a brief, glittering moment, it looked like maybe the fairy tale was real after all. It lasted 2 years. By 1980, the marriage was over. The reasons that surfaced were painful: rumors of betrayal, a fundamental mismatch, a relationship that couldn't survive under the pressure of royal life and the world's relentless gaze. For most people, a failed marriage is something you grieve in private. Something you work through quietly, surrounded by people who love you. For Caroline, it was front-page news. Every single day. She didn't collapse. She didn't break down in public. She composed herself, held her head up, and moved forward. But no one really knew what it cost her to do that. Then came Stefano. In 1983, Caroline met Stefano Casiraghi, a young Italian businessman, warm and genuine and completely unimpressed by titles and cameras. He loved her. Not the princess. Not the icon. Her. And for the first time in her life, Caroline felt something close to normal. They built a real family together. 3 children, Andrea, Charlotte, and Pierre. They had a home. They had laughter. They had a life that felt like it actually belonged to her. The world gave her a little space. And Caroline, quietly, was finally happy. But what happened next, no one was ready for. In October 1990, Stefano entered a powerboat racing competition off the coast of Monaco, and in one single, devastating moment, the boat capsized. Stefano Casiraghi was killed. He was 30 years old. She was 33. Alone. With 3 young children and a grief so enormous it had no name. The cameras caught her face in the days that followed. But nothing they captured came close to what was actually happening inside her. Because losing Stefano didn't just break Caroline's heart. It broke something deeper. The belief that love could stay. That happiness, once found, was allowed to last. She disappeared from public life for a time after that. She had to. She needed to breathe. She needed to be a mother. She needed to grieve without the world watching her do it. But grief doesn't follow a schedule, and neither does royal duty. Eventually, she came back. She showed up at galas and events and charity functions, always composed, always graceful, always smiling just enough. And everyone said she was handling it so well. She channeled everything into her children and her charitable work, arts, culture, childhood welfare. She poured her pain into purpose. And slowly, very slowly, she allowed herself to hope again. In 1999, Caroline married for the third time. His name was Prince Ernst August of Hanover, a German royal with a complicated reputation, known for being unpredictable, bold, difficult. People warned her. People doubted her choice. But Caroline had made her decision. With that marriage came a new title, Princess of Hanover, and what she hoped would be a new beginning. At first, they managed. They had a daughter together, Princess Alexandra. They moved between residences, attended events, maintained the appearance of partnership. From the outside, it looked like stability. But behind closed doors, the cracks were already forming. Ernst August was no stranger to controversy. Legal disputes. Erratic behavior. Public incidents that made headlines for all the wrong reasons. He was the opposite of the quiet dignity Caroline had fought so hard to preserve. And the whispers started again. Were they really together? Were they living separate lives? Was this marriage, like the others, slowly falling apart beneath the surface? Then came 2004, and everything shifted. Caroline's mother, Grace Kelly, had died in a car accident back in 1982, a loss Caroline had carried quietly for over 2 decades. And now her father, Prince Rainier III, the man who had shaped her entire world since the moment she was born, was dying. She was there. Every day. Not as a princess, not as a public figure, not as an icon, but as a daughter. Sitting beside him. Holding on. Prince Rainier passed away in April 2005. And something in Caroline shifted permanently after that. Those closest to her spoke about a change in her, something quiet but undeniable. A woman who had survived more loss than most people could comprehend, now looking at life through completely different eyes. Less interested in appearance. Less concerned with expectation. More focused, deeply and privately, on what actually mattered. And what mattered had almost nothing to do with cameras or titles or public approval. She began pulling back. Not dramatically. Not in any way the world could easily point to. But slowly, steadily, deliberately, Caroline of Monaco started disappearing from the life the world had always assumed she owed them. At the same time, the truth about her marriage to Ernst August became impossible to ignore. By 2009, he confirmed what insiders had known for years: they were living apart. No, why stay legally married to someone you no longer share your life with? Some said it was for their daughter. Some said it was a personal choice. Some said Caroline simply refused to give the world one more chapter of her heartbreak to consume. But the truth behind this was far more surprising than any of the rumors. Because Caroline wasn't broken. She wasn't hiding in shame. She wasn't falling apart. She was building something. Quietly. Deliberately. A life on her own terms, for the first time in 69 years. By the time she reached her 60s, those following Monaco's royal family started noticing something unusual. Caroline's appearances were becoming rare. Events she would always have attended, she wasn't there. Family milestones, she was absent. The woman who had once been photographed on every red carpet, at every gala, in every fashion capital in the world, was simply gone. And then the reports began to surface. Sources close to the family spoke carefully, quietly, about Caroline's health. About a period of difficulty. Physical challenges. The kind of private struggle that doesn't announce itself, and that Caroline, true to everything she had ever been, refused to perform for an audience. No statement. No carefully staged photograph to reassure the public. No interview where she smiled and said everything was fine. Just silence. And in that silence, the truth. Caroline of Monaco had always been a woman who refused to perform her pain. After Stefano died, she held herself together while cameras pointed at her face. During her troubled marriage, she carried the weight without saying a word. While sitting beside her dying father, she grieved privately even as the world watched. Again and again, in situation after situation, she chose dignity over drama.